watch a film like this, made by a major auteur filmmaker, my first viewing experience tends to be one where I just kind of let the aesthetics wash over me, and the kind of complexities of the plot, sometimes I am unable to focus because the aesthetics are so laser sharp, and I want to kind of just be immersed in the film. And so the complexities of the kind of the conspiracy in this film, I have many questions, and I'll try to get to all of them. But I wanted to start out, though. I had read in another interview that you did with my friend Nick Newman at the film stage that this was originally developed as more of a series with Netflix, correct?
Yes, yeah, that's right. I actually came to LA just before the pandemic, I guess, and pitched it to Netflix as a series. And I was really thinking that every week, every episode, I guess, Karsh would go to a different country and become immersed in the politics, the religion, the burial rites of that place, in an effort to establish his strange high-tech cemeteries in different countries, different cultures, and so on. So they were happy with the first two episodes, but finally decided not to continue. But I liked what I had written, and I thought that I will fuse those two episodes together and make the modifications that you would need to make this movie.
Well, we're very grateful that you forged ahead, and I think that sometimes great things can come out of a detour like that, or you hit a roadblock, or you end up having to take a detour of the project. I mean, you think of something like Mulholland Drive that was originally a TV pilot, almost 3-hour TV pilot, and then David Lynch famously went and got the rights back and found more money to shoot another. Most of the third act of the movie was shot after the fact, and we were blessed with Mulholland Drive. So this is another situation where I think it's very exciting that you were able to navigate that.
Yeah, from abject failure sometimes comes something good.
Well, yeah, it's something that there's so much going on in this movie, and I guess I'll get into some of my questions that might not even need to have answers, or the ambiguity could be part of the magic of the movie in a sense. But I wanted to ask about the bone growths in the skeleton of his deceased wife that are central to the plot, and then there is an explanation given by I guess it's the oncologist with ties to the Chinese company that manufactures the Shrouds, explains that they are a CGI creation, and then Guy Pearce's character claims that this doctor is lying, but Guy Pearce's character is perhaps an unreliable narrator in a sense, or an unreliable character. Is there an answer to that question that is the truth, or is the ambiguity meant to be, if they're real or not?
We'll have to wait for the sequel. Because I could always do a sequel that's a movie and not a TV series. There's a lot of twisting and turning vis-a-vis the conspiracy aspect of the film, and I am aware that some people think that that's a strange way for the movie to veer off from what begins as a kind of psychological drama that involves grief and loss and so on. But it really starts right at the beginning, the blind date scene, and I had that date, by the way. So I don't if you're interested, I have her phone number. But for me, I found just over the years when there were people who died. is conspiracy. They say, because when somebody dies, it's basically meaningless. It seems to be absurd. Why did they die? Why didn't they just live longer, you know? And it's very difficult for human beings to accept meaninglessness, especially in an emotional situation like that. And so conspiracy is one strange way that people assign meaning to things that are perhaps not really meaningful, but you need them to be to survive. And I think we human beings have evolved to look for meaning everywhere. It's one of our strengths. It also could be a flaw, you know. So they're looking to find out why the doctors screwed up and didn't manage to save her. Why did they not use the most current techniques of cancer reduction? Was it the doctors? Was it in fact, were they in the wrong place? Should they have gone to some other clinic, some other country? You know, it goes on, and a lot of it's involved with guilt too. Your guilt at being a survivor. You know, this person died. Why them and not you? So that's really the basis of the conspiracy here, more than that it's that they are the source of a revelation that will clarify things. The things will not get clarified. That's unfortunate, but that's my feeling about the film.
Another question regarding the final scene of the film and the wife of the Hungarian technology CEO, her disfigurement at the end. Is the final scene meant to be a dream that he's having, or is the disfigurement literal?
It's. I think I was hoping it would be clear. You see that he's dozing off at the beginning in the airplane, and so it's basically a dream. But it's a very significant dream because it's suggesting that he will never be able to make love to a woman without his wife being there in his understanding, in his feeling, in his nervous system, and his body. And any woman who is sensitive enough to understand that, to realize that, would have to accept that would be their kind of relationship. So it's really she is bearing the scars that we know from his other dream sequences, his wife's scars from amputations, from her cancer treatment. So that's basically it. I can give you a definite answer.
Okay. The experiments on his wife that are alluded to by her sister, both characters played by Diane Kruger, and I think a wonderful performance in the sense that it's like a triangulation of a performance because Diane is playing sisters, but she's also playing this avatar, Honey, which I want to ask you about too. But her conspiracy about the doctors intentionally experimenting on her is one of the most disturbing parts of the story for me because we think about oath, you think about we want our doctors to be always operating with a pure sense of helping people, and the idea of a nefarious plan to experiment on someone's body without their knowledge, and that's very disturbing. And there are. I find a lot in this movie, even though there's a dark comedic streak through the entire film, and there is, what I observe, a sense of wanting to use that humor in processing grief. There's all of those layers to it on an emotional level. There's a very disturbing plausibility to a lot of this, I think.
Sure. The doctor's plot that Karsh mentions to Terry, talking about Stalin's persecution of Jewish doctors during the heyday of the Soviet Union. That was a real thing. And the idea was to suggests that there was a cabal, a plot of Jewish doctors to kill Soviet heroes when they were in the hospitals and stuff. And that was the way Stalin justified purging those doctors and murdering most of them as well. So it's a conspiracy that can go a couple of different ways, and each way is pretty disturbing, I must say. But the other thing is, there's a strange jealousy thing that can happen after somebody dies. I remember, wondering if things come up from the past that you maybe didn't realize about your partner who has died. Relationships that she or he had that you didn't know about, and you hear about it later because somebody is sending you a grief card, and you're wondering why this person is sending it, and you discover that they had an affair. There's all of those things that can destabilize you in the case of a grief-stricken situation. So there's all of those things working in the movie, and it's not as though, as I said, I was never intending that there should be a stunning rebel. It's not like a detective story where everything is all tied up at the end and you discover who the killer is and so on and so on. It's not that at all, and that's one of the even more disturbing things is that it doesn't get resolved.
Yeah. I wanted to talk a bit more about Diane Kruger and her performance and sort of crafting the sisters and how they complement one another and how the approach to even just like the physicality and the costuming and the hair, and was that a real collaboration with Diane in terms of?
Oh yes, I mean sure. It was a major collaboration, even to the extent I haven't actually talked about this before because it hadn't really come up, but we couldn't really. I knew that Terry should have short hair and that Becker should have long hair, and I don't think of them. I wasn't thinking of them as twins, just sisters, who look a lot alike and are very close. But it doesn't matter if you think of them as twins; it still works. We couldn't afford a really good wig for Terry, and she got in touch with the producer of one of the movies she had just done, where she wore that wig, that very same wig. And the producer very hated because it's thousands and thousands of dollars for a really good wig. So we used that wig that is in some other German movie. I was hoping it wouldn't affect your accent, which is actually in English is actually really good. She is German. She speaks flawless French and English. It's pretty impressive. So there's that. So that's a major.
Never let a good wig go to waste.
Never. And then they still had it, they didn't throw it away. So, but yeah, I mean, for example, when she's doing the Avatar, that was a motion capture. It's like how Peter Jackson did Gollum for Lord of the Rings. It's you wear a full body motion capture suit. It has sensors all over. You've got a camera looking right into your face and reading your lip movements and so on. And then there she is in a warehouse. It's bare, absolutely bare, concrete floor, surrounded by 14 cameras also. And so, and she's acting in that kind of strange limbo that is the way that is done. And then once you have that data, you can create any kind of avatar, even a koala bear, that can follow the movements and lip movements and voice, of course. So once again, that's acting.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful kind of, I guess, a triangulation in a way for an actress to be able to. The system, whether or not they're twins or just sisters, you sense that there is a connective tissue between the three performances that is really wonderful, and it kind of gives a presence or was a manifestation of of perhaps his grief and the fragmentation of the memory that he has.
Sure.
And very effective. And
Yeah, well, she, I didn't really want to do the sort of traditional thing when it's a grief movie, a grief story, which is, you have a flashback to when they first met, and you have a flashback to when they went to that great spa in Switzerland, and you have a flashback to when, they went dancing at this great club. I really felt that Karsh was so obsessed with her death and her sort of basically dismemberment really by the medical profession, and not as a criticism really of the medical profession, but if you're going to do chemo, if you're going to deal with all the things that happen, you end up with that kind of really mutilation really of a body, and if you're in that system, you have to live with it. You have to find a way to live with it. So I thought he would be focused on that when he was having a sort of nightmarish dream. She would come to him like that. And so on the other hand, Terry is quite a different person. And of course, Diane had a lot of fun with Terry because she's kind of mischievous and she's kind of subtly aggressive and all of those things. And is also turned on by a conspiracy, which is another aspect of it that I think does exist in some people. I won't say who. But you can have her phone number.
There is a very specific kind of visual language that you have crafted now with your cinematographer and shooting digitally and doing motion capture and employing the most cutting edge technology to kind of achieve this, again, I say a very plausible technology in a way, because I was looking at the Shrouds and the CGI recreations of the skeletons, and it felt very real.
Yeah, you could definitely, you could do that now, right now. All the technology totally exists, and I am, in fact, willing to sell you as a franchise if you're interested. Just one grave in your backyard. Start small and expand your yeah, it's not really science fiction. It's just if somebody really wanted to do it, they could. The Shrouds wouldn't probably look the way they look, but cameras in a grave with some lighting and some MRI and X-ray. I mean, you could absolutely do it.
Was that actually Diane's skeleton that was when you were doing, because you were doing the motion capture with her on the stage for the Honey Avatar?
Well, we didn't just do that. We did scan her
So that's your skeleton.
completely. Yeah. Well, it was primarily for the opening scene where she's floating in this kind of tomb, and that was her body, from a full body scan, which was separate from was different from motion capture. And I had our CG guys base the skeletons on that scan.
I'm getting a 5-minute call from Cronenberg here, so I'll try to get to just a couple more questions here. The floating moth, the glowing moth that's hovering over her body.
I think of it more as a sort of combination of a cicada and a firefly. As a kid, I was very obsessed with insects, and so as a junior entomologist, it occurred to me that in the world that we live in, that could be what a soul looked like if you believed in a soul.
Okay. Would you say that would be her soul taking one final look at her body, or would you say that?
It's explained, really. He explains it. It's in the Jewish tradition, the reason that you bury someone and you don't cremate them is that the soul has to take its time to disconnect from the body, because it's a painful thing for the soul to do that. It's lived in that body, with that body, however long, and it needs to disconnect. And finally, it accepts that the body is decaying and it needs to fly off to heaven. But, and of course, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in any of that literally, but metaphorically, it's really quite beautiful. And I think that Karsh is that soul. I think he has become her soul, and he's the one who's having difficulty separating from that body, and he needs to see it decay. So that's more, you know, it's not obvious in the movie, but that's the way I think of it.
Well, again, there's obviously a deep well of emotion running through this film, and there's a poignancy to it, and the humor, I think, is a brave approach to this subject matter.
Well, for me, speaking of evolution, as I have been, I think we have also evolved to develop a sense of humor as a way to survive, as a survival mechanism. Because being a human being with the awarenesses that we have is not easy, as you all might have noticed or not. I don't know. But if you live to be 82, you'll find out. So I think every movie I've done is funny also. I've gotten along with other things. And I think it's just, to me, it's natural. I don't really have to force it into the movie. It just comes. The characters, as I say, they say funny things, whether I want them to or not. And they do funny things.
Well, we are very grateful for all of your films, and we hope to get many more. And I feel like this is a film made from a very efficient mind, a very vibrant young mind still.
Thank you. Thank you.
So,
I'm gonna look in the mirror today and see if I see that.
well,
Thank you.
keep them coming, and we can't wait for the next one. And if you could please stay in your seats, and we will be finishing up and exiting. And tell all your friends to go see the Shrouds as it opens and expands in more cities. Next weekend, we have a bigger expansion happening.
Yeah.
Our wonderful friends at Janus and Sideshow, a great distributor. Thank you to them.